You're all adults, but think back to your childhood. What have we forgot about our childhood? Okay, it's playing in the mud. Maybe it's thinking that life exists of good food, ice cream, things like that. But the major thing that we forgot about our childhood nowadays is that we were completely conquering the world by our questions. So the questions was the start of how we actually entered the world. We asked anything that we liked, and nobody cared. We asked about why did people go to war. We asked why do two people go naked into bed. We asked why is the sun yellow and the sky blue. Why did we forget about asking about the world? When I was finishing school, I was 100% sure I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be on the stage. I thought, this is my thing. I was on every single acting course throughout my life, in school, outside school, so I decided to go for an appointment at the famous acting school in Munich. And I decided to go for a really serious part, Emilia Galotti by Gotthold Ephraim Lessing. A woman who's dying in the end, which I thought is a good thing, so it's a really serious part. So every day I stand in front of my mirror at home, my youth children room, rehearsing Emilia Galotti. Day by day in, day out, I think about her. But I make a frustrating experience. After a few weeks, I look into the mirror, and there is still Nicola Gref, but no Emilia Galotti. I think, okay, let's face it. Maybe I'm on the wrong track. And I asked myself, was I really prepared to be a good actress if I wasn't even prepared to be a good Emilia Galotti? And to confront myself with that question, I realized, thinking about all the theater courses and the plays I had been in over the years, I never had a major part. I was a great tree. I had these fantastic 4 phrases that were really important. And I thought, well, bringing these two things together, maybe I should get rid of my dream of becoming an actress and confront myself with the question of who I really wanted to be. So again, I thought, if a question could trigger a situation where I changed my life into something else, a professional life, that could be a good start of a new idea of how I wanted to become a professional. So I decided to make my curiosity and questions the basis of my professional life. I didn't want to know more about the characters on stage, which weren't real characters. I decided I wanted to know more about real people, about lives that I hadn't lived and would never live. So I buried Emilia Galotti, went to Munich anyway, studied philosophy, literature, a bit of theater studies, went to Paris to study languages, worked in a bookshop there, did a scholarship in London, started directing theater in London, and then finally I thought, well, I think I must go for something more real. So I went to Hamburg to NDR Television and did a traineeship there. I got a job as a commissioning editor, which was great. I was young. I thought, fantastic, I have a solid job now. And I worked there for about 3 or 4 years and was responsible for cultural and political programs. But in my head, I realized, where are all these questions, all these people I want to meet? They're not there. And there was one triggering experience, and I think it's always these kind of triggering experiences that change something in life. I was sitting in the canteen for lunch, like every other day, with my colleagues. Every other day we went to the lunch break, 12:30, and had our lunch. And I realized something weird. From all these hundreds of people I was surrounded by every single day, I was the only one who took down her plate from this orange, really ugly plastic tray onto the table. And I felt a bit like being part of the Truman Show. It's like every day we do the same thing in this ritual with the plastic tray. This can't be it. I wanted to know about the world. I wanted to find about different lives. But how can I do this here? In a solid system, in a frame that is kind of a ritual every single day. So I decided I had to change something, And a few weeks later, I quit my job, my solid job. My parents were like, "You're quitting a solid job." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm quitting a solid job." I was very lucky because I had a friend at the company who was a freelancer, and with her by my side, we founded Luna Media, the film production company. And we made curiosity and questions the basis of this company. We decided we wanted to show the lives of other people, to you, to the viewer. So in some ways, it has been since then, and we have founded the company about 15 years ago. We produced about 200 films, and we have a team now in Hamburg and in Berlin. And all we do is follow our curiosity. So in this respect, I ended up in different scenarios. I ended up, this was one of my last films with the family of Gregor Gysi. I wanted to know how singing felt like, so I went to New Orleans, did a film on filming. Then I did something on Hollywood because I wanted to know how Hollywood worked, so I went there to find out how it did. I was in Kosovo to find out how German soldiers worked in the war. I went to the most famous nightclub in Berlin to find out how it was to work with prostitutes. I went to Japan to see how a geisha was doing what she was doing. I thought, because I was never so much into hip-hop, how German hip-hop works. I spoke to people who were kidnapped for 6 months in the Algerian desert and many other things. And what I realized, this is a fantastic job. I love what I'm doing because it's like a training space. Every time I meet something new, every time I learn something new. You might be thinking, what has that to do with my life? Nice photographs, interesting experiences. The thing is, when you start asking questions, you will create a space yourself with the other person as well. And this is what it's about. No matter whether you do documentaries, or whether you work in medicine, or whether you work as a judge, you open up a space of creativity when you ask someone something more than how are you, what are you doing, what's your job like. It's about being creative in getting to know the person opposite you. And then you feel like empathy, sympathy, and you create something new. You might have another objection. What about people who don't want to be questioned? People who don't want to have a direct contact with me, who are reluctant to answer anything that I want to know from them. That happens all the time. I give you an example. I did a really difficult documentary about 2 families who had a traumatizing experience. 2 families who didn't know each other, had an accident, and in both families, one of the partners, in one case the woman, and the other one the man, fell into a coma. So the healthy partners meet by chance in the hospital because the 2 partners in the coma were in the same room. So what happens is, over weeks of fear, of emotions, of insecurities, they get to know each other and fall in love. Shortly after, their 2 partners wake up, more or less at the same time. Real story. Yeah. Both had heavy brain damages. So what were they going to do? They decided to stick together, put their partners in nursing homes, moved in together with their 4 kids, and started, against all families' objections, a new life. 3 years later, I entered this family. I wanted to do a documentary. We had a lot of conversations, and they decided, okay, we're going to go for it. So we start filming, and after a few days, the mother comes up to me. Nicola, listen, we have to stop this project. It's too much. The questions are traumatizing my children. It's emotionally too much impact. Let's stop the project. And I'm like, I don't want to stop this project. This is a real incredible story. It's about emotions that, none of us would ever have. So I asked the family the following. I tell them, why don't you sit all together as a family and discuss the situation, and then we all reconsider? Okay, they do. So in the end, after an hour, the mother comes back to me. Listen, surprise in her face, things have changed. And I'm like, okay, kind of, we have to leave. My children and the children of my new partner, all 4 of them, being teenagers and adults at the time, told me they wanted to continue this film. And I'm like, why? Because through the questions that you have posed them, they talked to each other for the very first time of what had happened to them 3 years ago. So for the very first time, through triggering questions, they started connecting in a complete different way as they had done before. What I want to tell you with this story is that even if it seems hard to pose a question, don't give up. Create a space of trust. Create a situation where you feel comfortable and make the other person feel comfortable too. That means follow your intuition, and we've heard a lot about intuition today, and I think it's very important for asking questions as well, but also be perceptive. I think this is sometimes something that we keep forgetting nowadays, that perception, really getting into the other person who's sitting or standing in front of us, is one of the most important things. Okay, you might have another objection. What happens if I meet someone who is famous, or who is my boss, or who is very powerful? Say, I want to meet Bill Gates or Donald Trump. No, I don't want to meet him. Say somebody else. I have been in this situation several times. I met, for example, one of the last interviews was with Schäuble, our ex-minister. I thought, oh my God, this is going to kill me. How do I mean, he's so important, he rules Europe, what should I do? But I think most important is relax. Follow your intuition, just be yourself. So he moved into the room in his wheelchair, and I have to admit, it was the first time I had interviewed someone in a wheelchair. And I said to him, Herr Schäuble, I'm sorry, should I roll you in? Should I stand next to you? I feel a little uncomfortable with, I have never. So I just expressed my doubts, and the ice broke. Another example I want to give you when it comes to people you admire is, in my case, very often artists. I have been in the art since I can think of, because my parents are art collectors, so we had a lot of artists hanging around till 3 in the morning. When I was already in bed, they were still talking about the arts. So somehow I grew up with artists. And Neo Rauch, the famous Leipzig painter, was always someone I was interested in. I tell you why. Because I didn't understand his paintings. They're weird. I mean, they're kind of people from a time that we can't really describe. There are abstract forms in them. He himself is a weird character. And I thought I really want to know more about this weird character, and especially about his paintings. So I spoke to a few people in the art world, a few journalists, and they all said the same. Forget it. He's not giving interviews. He doesn't want to be filmed. Nobody's entering his studio. A few little interviews here and there, but nothing that you have in your mind. So again, I was confronted with the question of how can I create a space of questioning someone who seems to be unreachable. So what I did was, he had an opening, and at the time I was reading The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I loved the book. Very kind of artistic book. And the book had a language that very much reminded me of the language of Neo Rauch. I don't know whether you've ever heard him talking. He talks very different to us. He talks some kind of almost old language from another century. And that reminded me of the book. So I went to this opening, and there he stood, protected from his gallery. And there was this one moment, and you always have to catch this one moment, otherwise you can go home, where he stood there on his own. And I'm like, with my book, hi. Very nervous, shy, I admired him, he was kind of my hero. I've got this book for you. It reminds me of your language. He's like, my language? So in kind of brackets, doesn't she want to talk about art? No, about your language. And he was kind of curious, which is always good. Second phrase, oh, my wife is reading the book at the moment. I'm like, oh, good. Helps. So he invites me to a studio without the camera team, and we start talking. I think after the first, second, third conversation, we only then started talking about his paintings. I think it's important, especially when you meet people, and I mean kind of people who are from companies are also used to being talked to, interviewed, questioned, that you find some kind of questionnaire that is not so close to what they're used to. So in the end, to make the story short, we were there for 3 years, my little team and I. We had lots of conversations. We filmed him painting, and I asked him, I don't know, about 2 million questions. And it was great. What I just want to tell you is that questioning needs also surprise, courage, and again, trust. But I tell you, what are the hardest cases? Women. You wouldn't believe it. I tell you why. When I was a child, a girl, I always wanted to be a strong, convincing woman. I had a feminist as a father. I had a great, still have, great, strong mother, and I wanted to be the combination of both. So it's not surprising that I founded my company with a female partner, and we have an all-female team, and we are kind of quite heavily involved in the kind of feminist discourse. So one day I decided, that was a few years ago, I wanted to do a film about powerful women in corporate, in kind of blue chip companies. At the time we had from 40 DAX companies in Germany, we had, I think, 7 or 8 leading women. I'm like, fantastic. 8 calls, 8 possibilities, no problem. They get a fantastic platform. We talk about female power. We talk about female creativity, not the old thing about how you combine it with children. No, 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 no. We do something else. Okay, to make the story short again, 1 year later, 60 companies later, I had 2 women in the media, in the middle of management. All the big CEOs, all the big female CEOs rejected. So this is something I want to tell you ladies. I was really annoyed. I was really angry because I thought, you females, you're always easy to say, oh, you know, we don't have a chance in the power system, it's all about male systems. But if you're not prepared to be a role model, if you're not prepared to stand up your woman, then you have a problem too. So when I did the film in the end, I was kind of thinking, and this is not only happening with economical contexts. I have done, I don't know, 20, 30 films on fine arts. You call 10 male artists, you get 10 yes. You call 10 female artists, if it works, you get half a yes. And what I'm surprised is, I don't know how it works in your private life, but when you go out to a party, to a dinner, who is asking questions? More the men or more the women? My experience, women ask many more questions than men. Men love to be asked. So why is there a difference between the women in the private life and the women in the professional life? Why is it that they kind of fill a whole room by creating a situation, but when it comes to the professional stage, they become shy, fearful, doubtful? It's all okay to be doubtful, but please, for the future, because you are the future, do and try to work on this, because if you ask the questions to your boss, to your colleague, to your team, you can create a space for yourself. So the only problem I have, and this is also talking about the future, is I have been in a training space for the last 15 years. Every single person is a training space for me. It's fantastic. But my experience is now we are losing the training space because we are living more in the digital world, where you don't have a face, you don't have somebody sitting in front of you, you can't even create an atmosphere because you're in the net. So, my hope is, and I'm not the kind of person who's saying, oh God, I hate Twitter, Facebook, whatever. But my hope is that you all still find enough space to get trained with questions, with analog dialogue, and creating a space where you become with the other person the center of something new. And the great thing is, you would put one person here, And all of you would have a different question. And that is what I hope for the future, that we have a lot of questions, whether it's shy questions, faithful questions, quick ones, fast ones, boring ones, no matter. They create a communication, and this is what we all should think about. So my wish for you, be a bit more playful, be a bit more childish, ask many questions that are more than how are you. Thanks very much.